have this under. So good afternoon, everybody. It's a BPAC meeting on Wednesday, February 26th at 3:38, and we have a quorum. And so if the members who are present could affirm that they're present. Edwin Claflin.
Affirmation.
Thank you. Joseph Topham, Esquire.
Affirmation.
Affirmation. RJ.
Present.
Present. I can only barely hear you. So thank you, everybody. So we've established a quorum. A thumbs up for an approval of the agenda. Great. Unanimous. I don't believe there were minutes. Were there, Mike, or I didn't see them?
They were incomplete, and I just
Okay.
didn't complete them before this meeting.
Okay.
So I apologize for that. I'll bring them over for the next meeting.
Not at all. And thank you for providing minutes for us. And then
I do the best I can. Apologies for it being delayed.
So this brings us on to action and discussion items. First is Tom Nevers bike path alignment alternatives. So do you want to put that up on the screen, Mike?
Sure. Let me bring that up now and Control L. There we go. Share my screen. Let me know when that's visible for everybody.
Yep.
All right. And our design consultant, Weston and Sampson, helped put this together. I should probably preface it by saying we have a new project manager from the consulting team working on this. So there's been a little bit of a learning curve with getting them on board with the project and let them know where we are in the design process. So we've done that. And I've had to do a little bit of tweaking. I did put this up a couple of days ago, but again, kind of working with the design consultant to massage the slide deck to sequence it and make sure that we're talking about all the different options we should be talking about. And I want to start off first, if it's all right, to talk about a section of the path between Old Tom Nevers Road and the end of the road to the playing fields. And say that there's essentially two options that we wanted to, that we got feedback from the abutters on. Option one is essentially bike lanes, essentially a usable shoulder on the edge of both sides of the roadway. I don't think I need to go and explain what a bike lane is to you all. You're pretty familiar and fluent with all that. So it's basically having a usable shoulder on the edge of the road instead of option two, a separated multi-use path that's got at least a 4 to 6 foot buffer between the road and the path. I'm going to try to walk through. Well, here's the slide showing the differences between the two, showing the bike lanes on both sides of the road and the path that's separated from the road. You can see, using this one property that's outlined in magenta, the property lines, how you can see that how impactful to the property it would be for the path option versus the bike lane option. Bike lane option virtually has minimal or no impact to abutting properties, whereas in order to avoid utilities and some other landscaping, I mean, there's utility poles and guy wires, and there's other utility equipment that's in the right of way that the path would need to avoid. It's fairly impactful. So just talking with the abutters, not surprisingly, most of them preferred option one. And I'll just sequence down. Here's the section from at the top of the screen here. It's Old Tom Nevers Road, and going down to the very bottom, try to highlight that there is a transition from a path to the bike lanes at this location that's along a bit of a straightaway of Tom Nevers Road. So the site distances were a problem, but that is the transition point, and just noting the benefits of that. You know, again, minimum impact to abutting properties and no conflicts with utility poles. The challenges are conflicts with vehicles, and there might be a bit of a cost if we added a berm to that, which I don't think we're recommending at all. But it's overall the bike lane option had very little impact. The bike path option was very impactful to some property owners, more so than others. And just say that, there are benefits to a separated path. It's the treatment that's used predominantly on the islands. That's kind of when people say bike path, that's what they're thinking of in their minds. It does provide it's definitely safer with the separation from the roadway, separate from the vehicle traffic. And it's probably a better experience too. The challenges are there are an incredible amount of easements, and I can show you a chart of before and after later on in the slide deck showing those. But that's having the path being so impactful to those properties. That really led to most of the abutters really asking that we consider option one, the bike lane option. So, oops, I went a little bit too far. So before we go to the balance of the other options from Milestone Road to Old Town Meadows Road, I'd like to get your input of whether you actually agree that we should be pursuing option one that's less impactful to the abutting property owners and would not require us to acquire the permanent and temporary easements to actually implement. Let me go back one more slide. Actually implement this path option here. It would greatly reduce the cost of the project, not only just for the construction, but also for damage awards that we would have to give to abutting property owners. So, Mr. Chair, I would ask that you support option one on this, but open up to discussion and happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Questions from commissioners? Or, excuse me, committee members. I beg your pardon. Wrong group. Hey, RJ.
Thank you, Chair. I would really like to see a Cape Cod berm. I'd be okay with option one if there was a berm as an added layer of safety. And I know it's an added expense, but it's got to be cheaper than option two, right? So I personally would really like to see a berm, but I think option one would work.
So if I may just chime in, RJ, the berm, you mean separating the lane from the road? Or then how would people coming out of their driveway, would they be bouncing across the berm on
Well,
all the driveways?
There'd probably be a break in it, right, Mike? For driveways?
We would need a break for the driveways and probably also for drainage too. There's,
Yeah.
the slope of the road, that's going to be another engineering consideration if a berm's used with any type of vertical separation between the road and the lane.
Thanks for the clarification. Anybody else? So I would consider option one, providing that all the driveways had stop signs or a warning that there was a bike path there, so that or I shouldn't say stop signs, a warning that there are bikes going by. I don't know, whatever. Some form of warning. Yes, Joe.
To that, I wonder, looking at the first top visual circle, if you will, the driveway coming out, and is there any way to put the cobblestone or Belgian block, whatever that material would be, to either side of the driveway, so it's a rumble strip that kind of alerts them that they're coming up to that, and that may be another way to help slow them down. So that, Ian, that was something we talked about.
Yeah.
I don't know, 6-8 months ago.
Right.
Some way, and Art Gasparo, when he was making his presentation for that project off of Sankey Road, that was one thing that he agreed with, having Belgian block on either side of the bike path, so that there was a way to alert people. And I know there might be a familiarity to when you leave your house, but it's still something that would, shake your coffee, if you will, out in the morning to make sure that you're going slowly. And that may help. Maybe we don't need the stop signs, maybe we do, but I think that would be a better way to kind of treat that, to make sure a 10-foot deep rumble strip was on both sides of a bike path, personally.
Let me actually go up to the this isn't as nice, but I think I see what you're saying, Joe, that if we do widen out the road, the Belgian block apron would need to be removed and reset. The lane
Yeah.
itself would be like 4 feet. So you're talking about 4 feet of Belgian block that would be put further back into the driveway. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if we can make it 10, I think that would be the preferable. I mean, there's a reason that 10 has been such a great standard for the town, driveways, curb cuts. So to me, that's kind of my way that I think that we could address, a concern I have that Ian, echoes. So, and I feel like that should be something, and I know it's a little bit onerous on some of the landowners, but I feel like the town should take care of this and do it, and whether they provide Belgian block for free or whatever, I just feel the to get this bike pass as safe as possible for bikers, people exiting, leaving, walkers, etc., joggers. I think it would be really kind of a smart move at that extra layer of giving you a sense of reminder that you're coming up to a bike path. I think that would be vital to the success of this project and others. I think that we should almost circle back on some of the bike paths personally.
If I may, Chair.
Oh, please.
I've seen in multiple areas where you put in bike lanes in areas which have public transportation as well, or like in cities, you put the bike lane in, it becomes a live standing area or a parking area or a place where buses are stopping. And in this case, where we'd have many driveways coming out and across, people just park across a bike lane as they're waiting to enter into traffic. I see option one is not a safest way or an efficient way. I see bike paths as more successful often. I know that on Nantucket specifically, like the Pulpus bike path, which is one of the more protected bike paths away from the side of the road, you have areas where cars will pull out of a driveway, wait for a bike path, and then we'll have another area where they can wait to be on a road. So it's safer for the cars. Anecdotally, this is not, I don't know if this is actually true, but it seems like it's safer for cars to pull out onto roads when they are clear of a bike path versus being parked across it or in a bike lane, or these areas seem to often end up being in developed areas and then having more people who are parking on the street or parking on them. I see it in a bunch of different areas, but like, especially in now with the amount of deer that we have as well, like deers are regularly hanging out in bike paths, but when you have bigger areas, cleared areas and bike lanes along the edges, you have deer and other things kind of all becoming obstructions for the bikes as well.
Yes, Joe.
To
Thank you. Edwin.
piggyback onto Edwin's comments, which I agree with, going out to Mattocket quite frequently and having friends that work out in that area, the one thing that they see is, even though that bike path is slightly elevated, is someone coming back and for whatever reason they veer. I don't texting. I don't know what the problem is, but there is like this. They get sucked up by the berm that is there, and I really think that they're even on Bartlett Road. There's a section there that looks really kind of sketchy. Excuse me. I feel like there should be some separation between a roadway, 3 to 4 feet of vegetation or more, and then the bike path. And then, I really feel like that, while it's kind of reduces in cost, but at the same time, what's the right thing to do to make it the safest? Where these are also corners, some people may veer off a little wide, but when you come along the pond, over the first bridge, you can definitely see there's some people swerving up, and I've seen it a couple times. And I don't travel out to Mattocket a lot, probably once a month, for a monthly meeting that I have to do. So it's really kind of not something that I'd be in favor of option one personally.
Totally.
Mr. Chair, if it's all right, can I suggest, I'm hearing a vertical separation or at least some kind of separation. I did hear the same thing from Joe. That I don't think DPW favors that for exactly the reasons that Joe that mentioned there. How about a buffered lane? So if we had like instead of just a 4-foot bike lane, maybe we go 5 feet and have a double white line a foot apart. Could create a little bit of a visual separation. You think that would be a compromise?
Is that a question to me or to to everyone? I mean, there's no question that option 2 is safer, and I think that's unanimous. What we're trying to do is work out a compromise, because you're saying it would be so much more expensive and harder for the town to achieve, right?
Oh, it would be contentious and probably litigious.
Yeah.
So I hear what RJ is saying, and I agree that maybe a lane next to the road, but maybe if we could put like a foot buffer between that, buffered bike lanes is something that MassDOT just uses routinely now. I don't think they use the traditional bike lane anymore. I don't think we would have to recommend the plastic stanchions with that. But does that sound like a compromise if we had the 2 parallel white lines for the edge of the roadway that would serve as a buffer if they're 1 foot apart?
RJ?
So the reason I like the berm is sort of playing into what Edwin was saying, where people do park along it, and I am a little worried that that is what's going to happen. And we can ask the police to go enforce getting all the white vans off, but I mean, I think a physical barrier is not only better for moving cars, but also to keep cars from parking along it is why I like the berm idea. If it wasn't such a like a epidemic on Nantucket, I think I'd be okay with your 1 foot separation with white paint, but I can't tell you how many times I'm going around contractor vans and try even downtown walking around them. They're parking on the sidewalk, and it's just such an issue. That's why I was leaning towards the Cape Cod berm. Um, that's my feeling.
So, does someone have people in the background? Am I the only one hearing conversation?
Yeah, I'm hearing the conversation, but I don't know who it is.
It's in my office and I can't find where the controls are that I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
How do I?
So it sounds as though you're missing a party, Mike. So Joe, I've seen that happen, and it's actually happened to me once on the lip on the Matticat bike path, and I was not on a cell phone, and and then when I meant stop signs, I didn't mean full-size traffic stop signs, more the sign or a yellow bike path sign, the size of a lampshade, like the small ones that shouldn't be there, in my opinion, at the Lucille Hayes Park there, where they've put small ones there. But so it looks as though we're divided on this subject. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, and the other part of this is I was trying to do a bike race, and it was 2016 or 15 or whatever it was, and which would start out at the Tom Nevis Field and ride out and go through Tom Nevis East, and then come back and then have a whole bike day of training kids and stuff like that, and sheriff being involved. And but I would say that the Tom Nevis Association, they are very organized, and I also think in light of Stephen Cohen, I think if there's a way to say that this is the safest way, that whatever recommendation that is, we may get a different, more positive reply from the neighborhood association and the neighbors to say this is the safest way to go. I do know the whole reason for doing that was to have a bike race, and it would pay for plans for bike paths on Nantucket, and it's called Ride the Path, and they were really in favor of this bike path. So I don't know if we're going to get as much pushback as we think, and I think unless you ask, you don't know. And I don't know if it's something we can kind of reach out to them and say, can you reach out and have everyone kind of weigh in, or just these specific lots? But to and I hope I'm not wrong, but I feel like that this would be seen in a more favorable light since 2016 when I started. They were very much in favor of a bike path. A couple people weren't, but the vast majority were. So I kind of feel like let's not, get gun shied. I think we kind of need to reach out, even if it takes an extra month or something. But I think it's a necessary, not work from a place of fear, but place of knowledge. Let's find out exactly what they are thinking and what hurdles that the town would need to work with. But I think at the same point, the Pleasant Street extension where, the felines, no, we want to help out. We want to work with the town. We don't want the one way. We want to, is that kind of the new tenor of the island? And I think that that's something that we should really kind of investigate before we, come up short or put something that would not be the best option for Nantucket. That's my personal take.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to that really quick? And I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off when
You didn't cut me off, Mike, and you're welcome to do so anyway. So go ahead.
Joe, just to your point, like last summer, I really spent last summer reaching out and talking and coordinating with all the abutters up and down the road. And there was a couple of property owners along this section that I didn't hear from, but it was fairly unanimous that they wanted the bike lane option. And I could let me share that spreadsheet. I don't know if I should offer that, but I would say I heard back from probably half of the abutters who would be impacted by the path. Along this section, it's fairly unanimous that they did not want the path on their property at all. And the other section from Old Tom Nevers to Milestone, I honestly didn't offer that option, and we'll talk about that next. But of the half the people that I heard from, it was probably split 50-50 of those willing to give easements. In fact, some were very adamant that they did not want it on the property at all. So that having done this for 25 years or so, most projects do have two kinds of abutters: those who are just willing to give everything to it and just tell me what you need to sign, what I need to sign in order for you to build the project, and others are like, no, I won't. I don't want the property on the path of my project property at all. So there's two kinds of people, and it's a mixture of the ratio.
Yeah.
But it's never unanimous, and we never get all donated easements.
No, and I didn't figure that, but I figured in the light of like the recent history and hearing a lot of rumblings about the Pleasant Street one way, all negative. But I just didn't know if that would one more shot before you shut the door. I guess my question.
Well, and I think it's a really valid point, Joe, because we're from the point of view of trying to make biking as safe as possible on the island. Clearly, the path is safer. So then.
Well, I think to that, I think it's not only biking, but I think pedestrian, walking, jogging.
Yes.
It's a whole multi-use. I know it says bike lane, but to me, I never see it as just a bike lane.
Right.
To share the path. It's,
right.
So I think the argument can be made that a bike lane will essentially just widen the road and create a faster flow of traffic, and people will naturally be speeding, which you can't make an argument because the speed limit would stay the same. But yes, traffic will naturally flow faster. You'll have more people naturally parking on the sides of that lane. And overall, a bike lane would the economic property values increase when you have a bike path that is a scenic bike path. A bike lane along the edge of the road that don't protect people enough, lower property values. So I think the argument that can be made often to people along bike paths, like there was huge amounts of pushback against the Pulpus bike path when it was put up, and it took decades to get going, but it overall has increased the value of the entire area because it's a scenic, beautiful bike path that provides a safe way to get to town. I think there's benefits to both sides.
Well, so I think there's your answer, Mike, that we prefer option 2.
Okay, if there's consensus for option 2, I'll note that, and then I'll show you the table that shows we're probably not gonna be able to build the project because it's too expensive doing option 2. But I'll note that and share that.
Yeah.
With the groups. Now, moving on to the path from this says trailhead, but it's essentially a trailhead at the Milestone bike path going to Nobody Farm Road. There's 3 options for this. And again, there was an initial option that had the path, I want to say it was 8 feet separation from the path to the roadway. We shared that with the butters and got a lot of negative feedback about, and they asked if we could redesign the alignment to be less impactful to properties. So going from left to right here, the least impactful option to abutters, and we developed this option because we promised the abutters we would provide this option. So don't kill the messenger. I'm doing this on behalf of the abutters. This provides a 10-foot wide bike path along the edge of the road. So no separation at all from the roadway. There is a conflict with utility poles. Where it conflicts with utility poles, there will be a divot and provide about a 4-foot passway between the utility pole and the roadway for path users. Probably not the most desirable option, but we did it for property owners to demonstrate that that was the least amount of impact. Option 2, the path is aligned straight lines just to the back of the utility poles with about a foot separation or less than a foot separation between the utility pole and the path. The poles are about 6 feet or so, 8 feet or so back from the edge of the roadway, but this would have a straight path just located right on the back edge of that. The compromise or something to reduce property impacts doing that strategy is option 3, which is a 4-foot buffer between the path and the roadway, which is that's just the least amount of separation we can provide. One, to have grass actually grow in the area between the path and the roadway, or also just be a sand trap. And also that's really the least amount of standard for design standards. That's the least amount of space that can be provided. So using that 4-foot buffer, and where there is a conflict with the utility pole, the path does bend behind that utility pole and then realigns closer to the roadway within 4 feet of the roadway. So that's option 3. And just to go along with the utility pole study, there are guy wires along the roadway. So our engineers are considering the location of guy wires with the alignment of the path. Sometimes the path just cannot be located behind the path. So it does bend behind the guy wire where it needs to. So there's more impact to abutting properties in some locations. So that's just to demonstrate that we did do a study of utility poles. And the table on the far left here is the original path that we discussed. This is about a 6 or 8 foot buffer between the path and the roadway. Again, straight across, so it does impact properties pretty significantly. The total area that we were impacting is 64,000 square feet of both permanent and temporary easement impacts. And then there's the right-of-way cost associated with that, 2.6 million. to where we have a total cost of 7.1 million. I'll let you know that there is a town meeting article this year for 6.85 million that we had to come up with a cost estimate at the beginning of the summer before this process. So we had $6.8 million is the town meeting budget. That's our ask. Under the original assumption at 7.1. So we're a little bit over budget once we got more engineering done. The subsequent options that we developed after coordinating with the property owners does greatly reduce those easements and those right-of-way costs. And you can see that it's almost an order of magnitude reduction in impact. So we do get at the very bottom of the screen across the bottom lines here, we're all within the $6.85 million, definitely totally within budget with about $1 million to spare. So this realignment does benefit the have much less cost than what was originally proposed. Option 3 is the option that let me just double check, see if there's any of these. Oh, there are some sections where we do kind of like walk you through section by section. You can see option 1 where there are these divots in the path where it's narrowed to avoid utility pole impacts. There are some benefits and challenges to that option. I think we talked about those already. The option 2, this is another one of the options showing that about a 6-foot buffer from the edge of the roadway, or at least lining the path to the back of the utility poles. Very straight path, but there are some locations where the alignment does need to go behind the guy wire. Is just unavoidable. And this is another location of that option 2. And then the option 3, which I would suggest that you recommend. This does give the 4-foot separation from the edge of the roadway with bending the path behind the utility pole. And you can see that there are little slivers of permanent easements that we would need to acquire from abutters, but it's greatly reduced by having majority of the path be 4 feet from the edge of the roadway. And here we are in some of the other locations to Old Town Nevers Road. And here's the benefits and the challenges to that. I'm going to scroll back up to the table here. And Mr. Chairman, I'm saying that I would recommend the option 3 for this. If you want to take a month to digest these options, that's fine. Or if you think that you agree and it does seem like option 3 is the compromise between siting the path right on next to the roadway, which I would say creates a heck of a burden for path users if it narrows down to 4 feet by utility poles. So I don't think we would recommend option 1. Option 2, I think would be fine, but it's still impactful to property owners. And I think we can avoid that. So, and option 3, I think does actually avoid that. So I would ask that you support option 3 on this and to implement the path within budget.
So it certainly seems a reasonable compromise to me. And I feel I would feel safe on a bike path that had a 4-foot buffer. What do other committee members feel? Yeah, that's a thumbs up from Edwin. Thumbs up from Joseph.
Yeah, I agree.
Thumbs up from RJ. There you go, Mike. Unanimous.
Very good. I appreciate that. I will note that these costs, I did assume that you would go along with me with a bike lane option, so I will have to adjust on these cost estimates if there is a path to go along that section between Old Town Nevers Road and the end of the road. But I'm going to share those options also with the MPDC and county commissioners. Ultimately, the county commissioners, they're the body that has to send out the damage awards, and they're the ones who need to make a decision on this. But I'll provide them with your suggestion that, or recommendation that a path be used along that section of roadway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that's it for that. I'll stop sharing.
So if there's nothing further to discuss on that, then that brings us to continue discussion of path stop sign removal. And so I know I said at the last meeting that I would go out and take more pictures, and I haven't. And meanwhile, Matt Fee has suggested that that we write the select board and make a presentation before them on this subject, and which I'm all for. And I know that Brooke Moore also would like to see it. So with your permission, I'd like to write a letter to the select board asking them to put it on the agenda, and they'll send it to Libby. Is that
Fine with that.
Everybody's approval?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Aye.
Excellent.
I will note, Ian, that you might get me in trouble with that. The NPDC chair did suggest that any recommendations from this group, since you're advisory to the NPDC, that it go through that channel.
Yeah.
I don't want to stop you though. It's just you're going to get me in trouble.
No, I understand that. And in fact, since I had that discussion with you a few months ago, I noticed that actually that the mission statement has changed. And so the mission statement has had, originally it said advisory to the select board and the NPEDC. Now it just says advisory to the NP and EDC. It was the select board that appointed us. We weren't appointed by the NP and EDC. So
No, the NPDC did appoint you.
no, they didn't. I stood up in front of the select board.
Joe, am I misremembering this? Is this an NPDC appointment?
No, we stood up in front of the select board.
Mine is NPDC, but I believe the appointments for at large is through the select board.
Right.
I don't remember appointing anyone. I do know Madigan area plan people. We definitely had to. They put in their application, the NPDC, and I don't know if it was something different for this board, but my understanding it come from the select board for ENC. So, and Ian, circle back on our conversation. I think we've gotten through some heavy stuff now that maybe we should kind of address that, and I can reach out to Barry and Nat, and or one of them. Sorry, I don't want to do an open meeting violation, but one of them, and have a conversation to I think it's important to get this in front of them. So, yeah, I can talk to Barry the next week or two.
All right, we'll hold off then till the next meeting.
Yeah, and what I can do is I can have a conversation with Barry, and then get that to Mike, and Mike can kind of connect the dots, if you will.
Well, and Mike, I'm sure you're happier with that than me firing off a letter immediately to the select board.
And I say NPDC chair, it was Mary Longacre at the time that really wanted to ensure that the NPDC blessed a recommendation before it went outside of to the select board or anyone else for that matter. And now Barry's the chair, so he may have different feelings on this, Joe. So I might have misspoken.
I don't mind having a conversation with him.
Okay.
And also on the this item, Mr. Chair, you had talked at your last meetings about replacing the stop signs, not removing them. And I want to say I volunteered to try to find an option for just how to replace them.
Thank you.
And I did attend I sent it to you all. I don't think anybody participated, but there was an e-bike training done by the San Diego region.
It was great.
For that was interesting. I don't know if anybody was able to watch the recording or anything. Edwin, you did?
Yeah, I was there for the meeting as well.
Okay. I noticed in just one of the slides they had presented that on their bike paths they had this intersection caution sign for paths that are along the waterfront there in San Diego. I asked about it. I don't remember the entire detail of the explanation, but he did say, because it would have derailed the point that he was making, he did say that this is an acceptable treatment, at least in California, for some kind of condition. I believe this was an intersection of actual multi-use paths, not an intersection with a roadway. But this was really the only thing I could come up with as an alternative caution sign rather than a stop sign. So would this be something that you would recommend using the 18-inch diamond crossroad intersection sign as a replacement to the stop sign, just to be clear for the recommendation?
Well, I prefer the Colorado approach, which I don't have that actually with me, but I've posted it before, where it basically is a yellow sign, but it doesn't have a crossroad on it. Um, and I don't have it in front of me, Mike, so.
Okay, no, I know what you're referring to, and that's, I
Yeah.
think that's actually has a font or lettering. It's a word that says caution or driveway. In fact, I think it says
Right.
driveway. So
Right.
I think this might be a little bit more appropriate for a roadway intersection. And frankly, I just couldn't find the one that you had recommended in the manual of the MUTCD. So it might have been something that the Colorado DOT had developed special for their
Gotcha.
application. This is just something that would be quick and easy. To just ask Ray to, these are about $50 a sign. So ask Ray if he can start ordering and start implementing this if it's something that is actually recommended. But that would be something we have to program in for as a program to replace certain signs, depending as budget allowed.
Well,
And
go ahead, Edwin. Sorry.
I was just curious. I know that there's been a generically a pushback of signage as an issue on Nantucket as a whole, and trying to reduce the amount of signs that are going up versus increasing them. Is there a way that these crossing signs could be done on the pavement of the bike path, being like approaching a crossing or something like that, versus posts and signs? And during the meeting, which I thought was one of the more informative meetings I've attended about the bike stuff, they talked about predictability of bike riders, and I was thinking a lot about the areas of the downtown that lead the downtown and going from a path to a sidewalk, and where things can jump out and where things can't. And so on a bike path, it seems very clear that everyone's staying on that path. On areas that are adjacent to the roads or bike lanes, bikes bouncing back into traffic at certain areas or potholes is a concern that I have. And so I think specifically with these signs, maybe doing more signage or writing on the path, is that something that we could administratively do compared to putting up more signs?
Like a pavement marking?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought the conversation in the meeting talking about multi-use lanes and roads where bikes are allowed to be in the center and having the chevrons and things like that, and understanding signage was a great conversation they were having as well.
So if I may, Mike, just you're advocating putting up these crossroad intersection signs on the bike path. In other words, where there are stop signs on the bike path, put that up and have stop signs on the roads coming in, so that to emphasize that they have to stop for the bike path, and then have this warning bikers that they're approaching an intersection. Is that your point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't advocate for that. I'm advocating for the standard that's in the MUTCD and used in the mass use design time. I'm for the existing condition. That's what I'm advocating for. If as an alternative, if this is something where you would like to remove some of the stop signs and replace it with something else, I think this is probably the closest thing to meet what you were seeking to do. And to Edwin's point, if there is a product, these things do have where you can just put them on the thermoplastic or something, you put it on the asphalt, hit it with a blowtorch and it melts into the asphalt, and use that as a pavement marking. If something like that exists and we could buy that, that could be an alternative to actually replacing the signs with this sign. It would just be the pavement marking with this type of caution.
I think that would be ideal, but that would include removing the stop signs on the bike path for the private roads and the secondary roads, as are the which is what we discussed and passed last month.
Yeah, definitely having the for the approach roadway to have a stop sign entering a roadway, like at a T intersection, something like this, a stop sign placed before the path itself. I think we're on the same page there. It's
Right.
just the signage treatment for the path users. I think that's what we're discussing. I think we're all on the same page that there should be some kind of marking of a crossing as a path
Right.
crosses a road. That marking should be there. The stop sign for the approach roadway should be a stop sign before the path for the vehicles that are approaching the path. For the path users, we're not on the same, we don't agree on that, but if I'm trying to refine what you are recommending, I think we would replace the stop signs or remove them with either this sign or a pavement marking, something to show that there's an intersecting roadway.
Well, speaking for myself, I'm in complete agreement with that. I absolutely think that, there should be a warning for the bicyclists. I think it makes it safer. So, does anybody else have an opinion? Well, I know you all have opinions. I mean, what I really mean is, would you like to articulate one of this? Yes.
Through you, I'd be open to doing something on the bike path itself to
Yeah.
Yeah.
keep the same number of signs, but just sort of rearrange things so that it works better. I'd be open to that.
I
Yeah,
do
I'm
see a
for it.
problem. Yeah,
Go ahead, Evan.
Joseph.
Sorry, no, go. No, you go. Sorry.
I interrupt way too much, so I apologize. I think the crossroad intersection sign that is being shown here, I don't know if that slows down a biker. It's basically saying, oh, that's not a stop sign. So I don't think it actually slows or bring awareness to that situation. I think it might be better served to have active driveway signs that are paid for by an individual adding a new driveway to something or crossing, or as an example, like Sanctity, they should be putting up their own stop signs because that's a private road, and there should indicate for their own safety of their guests that you should be stopping before crossing a path. But yeah, an active driveway sign maybe indicates something, but being a crossroad intersection sign, it just indicates, yes, you are driving through a crossroad, but it gives no direction of what you should do at that approach. So there's no predictability of what the bicyclists would do upon approaching that sign, besides being like, yeah, I agree, I am crossing a road. But it
Well,
wouldn't slow
that's a
them
good
down.
point. So in other words, it's not saying caution, which
It's not saying caution, it's not saying yield, it's not saying stop,
right.
because they don't have to do any of those things as a bicyclist with the guaranteed right of way. But it just ends up being an extra sign.
So Mike, I think that.
Sorry, Mike. Mike is doing such a great job, and I always
I
seem
know.
to be disagreeing with him. So, Mike, you're doing a great job.
It doesn't matter what I think, it's what state and federal law dictates. I mean, like I said, I'm a firm believer that this exercise that we're going through is in conflict with state statute. So what I'm trying to do is trying to understand and help you all refine what your ask is. Thank you for showing appreciation, but this is all very, we're all designing this on the fly. That's very atypical of anywhere else in the country.
Yes, Joe.
But to that, so through you to Mike, but I don't know if a lot of people get the input or everything's regulated on Nantucket, and we're always trying to definitely have more safety, but minimize impacts vertically, if you will. And I feel like anything you could do in the ground or in the grade, you come up now and that it's the red crossing strip. It's very successful, and as you come up, as your biker, you're coming up to something, and it makes you acutely aware, like, okay, let me get my head on a swivel. And I think it's kind of a smart thing to do. So I'm not knocking anyone off island or America, but I'm just saying that I think there are little, slight subtleties that we do that are well thought out designs, still have the same impact, but don't need to be, as impactful down the road. And I think that the ACC has kind of trained us to be this, and the historical commission even now more so as they get up to speed. Maybe that's something they can kind of win as well on this. But I feel like the cross, bike path you if you're riding it in that red stripe, you see that 50, 70, 100 feet away, and you're like, okay, I'm coming up to something that is important, is delineated. It's something I need to, get hyper aware of, like what's going on, and because sometimes you're riding, you're at the end of your ride, you're a little tired, that you just kind of come not complacent, but a little lackadaisical. That I think that is kind of a stronger message, and so I don't know. That's kind of my take on it, and that's the other reason why I was going back to the cobblestone aprons. They're very successful. I always coming out of my driveway, it works. It's a very subtle thing, that I think we should see if we can't get on either side of bike paths. So I think that's kind of something we need to be really enforcing, and maybe even have the DPWs take a next step, and it maybe something in the design to have that, the town takes one side of Belgian block and the other side is HTC, and you curb cut, or if you're building a house, you control both sides and you have to put it in as part of your permit. And I'm not trying to cause more cost to someone building a home in Nantucket, but I do think that there are impacts on both people. I mean, which is worse, coming out and hitting someone or scaring someone, or it's just, I think that any way we can make this safer, and I think it would be the wisest way to go. That's kind of my feeling, and that's why I think we kind of like option 3. I know it's a little more expensive by almost over $300,000, but at the same time, it's like, if you look at the whole project, that's kind of pennies on the dollar, if you will. So that's my take.
Well, thank you, Joe. And but yes, so I guess food for thought for next month, since Mike and I have agreed to disagree civilly as to the state and local law on the intersection of bike paths and private roads and secondary roads. So
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that you thought this was appropriate as an alternative for the signs. So you had talked about replacing the signs with something. Just wanted to see if I was on the same page as far as the alternative there. But we can hold this over for a month.
I
and continue
really
discussion.
appreciate you looking. I really appreciate your effort on this, Mike. Thank you, especially since it's something that you feel that we're barking up the wrong tree on this. So but the idea of having thermoplastic that you can actually warn bicyclists, I think, because Edwin's point is really, I think, cuts to the heart of the matter, that it's not really warning cyclists that they're approaching a private road, even though the private road, has to stop by law before entering into a main road or across the bike path. I'm surprised there aren't more alternatives, I guess, and it shows perhaps how behind the curve we are as a country for considering how many people are biking now. So
I will say there is an Association of Pedestrian and Bicyclist Professionals, APBP, that if you haven't heard of that before, might be something you want to research a little bit. They do give recommendations for bike racks. There are good bike racks and bad bike racks, believe it or not, and for very good reasons, and they articulate those. So, and they do these kinds of things too, where they make recommendations for signage and supporting of buffered bike lanes versus regular bike lanes, and they do all this research. And they're better at it than I am. They've done much more research. And there's another cities have an association of bike and pedestrian professionals. So there's a couple of them. They all provide the input for the guidelines that we're looking at right now. So if there's not that many options, perhaps I can invite you all to participate in the Moving Together conference in October, and we some of us can go there and attend a session and ask this pointed question to the engineers in the room. Put a little bit more items on the menu, please. The the one item, just as, we all have different tastes, so.
I'd say rented minivan, Mike, we're coming with it.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. All
I can
right,
tell you, like, it's grown in the last 10 years, that Moving Together conference. They actually had to move to a new venue because it's so popular and it sells out every year. So I'll be sure to tell you the second that opens up, and
thank you.
we'll all register and we'll all attend.
So,
We'll have to post it as a meeting though.
so that brings us on to the Pleasant Street one-way pilot.
What, hold on, before you jump that,
Yep.
Barry said he'll call me tomorrow,
Great,
Chairman Rector, so I'll
excellent.
be back. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Joseph. So, all right, Pleasant Street one-way pilot. Well, it's pretty much thumbs down from everybody I've heard, although it's not even set up as, for bicyclists per se, but the one way, I would say I've had at least half a dozen complaints. And does anybody have anything to say on its behalf? Yes, Joseph. Yes, RJ. Joseph
I
first.
would say mine is in house, if you will. My brother's been very much against it, and while we were heading up to the USA Canada game, we had a nice conversation about it. And I told him it was something that we wanted to investigate. We had the time and the opportunity with the road, being torn up. So I thought it was a very good time to do it. School break. Notice there was a little traffic jam from it. So it doesn't matter the year, and the streets are pretty much a ghost town right now. But it's having some impact. But at the same time, Mike's got the cameras or sensors on the side of the road collecting data, and I think that's really informative. As much as we can get from this pilot experiment, I think we should do it, and so I think it's a good thing. Do I think it needs to run out another month? I'm not really quite sure, but that's a question for Mike. To a point of, I don't know if there's a variable or whatever he's looking for. I've achieved that. I can now predict X, Y, Z, but I think that's really up to Mike to kind of tell us. Does it need to run, the full 2 months, or what the goal is? So, I think would be my recommendation is if the data points have been satisfied, then that would be kind of the end date. So
Thank you, Joe. And was that you I saw brawling with Canadians up there at the game?
no, it was nothing but love. It was all love. It was actually a lot. Yeah, sorry, we'll talk about that later on. But it was all love. It was an epic game. It was.
So, RJ, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I went back after seeing some of the feedback to the original plans. I think it was Beta Group had come up with for the options for the roads, I believe. And there was some talk of the redirection of that 165% heading towards the school, reducing safety. And in looking back, the traffic that's going back towards the school from this section of road being a one-way, there's a full sidewalk. There's no crosswalks in the area. The next one is the new one when you're heading towards the high school parking area. And then there's the one towards the Boys and Girls Club. And so I don't buy that there's a reduction in safety because there's an increase in traffic. I think it's one of those situations where most of the pushback I've been seeing so far has been for a convenience issue. I don't think that Beta would have recommended this as an option if it was actually going to reduce safety. And again, I've said in the past, I've been doored on Pleasant Street. This is a hill I'm going to die on. I think that this is for the best. We can only do one intersection at a time, and I totally understand how much of a pain the traffic is going to be from redirecting it, but I think that this is still for the greater good. I'll be curious to see what the actual data comes out with saying as far as passing through, but until Beta comes back or we actually see something that says this is going to reduce safety, I'm still for it, and I'm still gonna die on this hill because like I said, right now I think it's a convenience issue. I've been both stuck in that traffic and benefited from being able to bike that way safely at this point. So those are sort of my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. So, I mean, there is the issue of the abutters have offered easements to have, a bike path going down there to make it safer for bicyclists. And one of the problems I think right now, and Mike, you can address that perhaps, is that the horses, the yellow horses, the sawhorses are blocking most of the bike path there. I mean, there's literally only a 2-foot section that you can bike on. Is that just the nature of the beast?
I think the sawhorses were originally scooted a little bit more towards the center lane, center line. So you'd have a little bit more room to go around, but it seems like it works. I mean, I'm gonna have to bring my bike over here and ride it myself to see if it's burdensome or if there's an obstruction, but it seems like it works. And when I was out there with Drew with the sawhorses, and we were kind of thinking about if this is a good idea or a good tool or not. We definitely didn't want them to be spun 90 degrees and block more of the lane. We wanted them the barricade to be with the flow of traffic, so it would have more of a space. So that seems to work. I will just on one point, Mr. Chair. The abutters haven't offered an easement and willing to donate. We've talked to one of the family members who's supportive of the project and accommodations. He did ask that on behalf of the family that we do try this pilot. But there was a brother in the family that actually controls the property that we would need the easement from, and that's I don't think that we would get a voluntary grant of easement. Like there would be some damage.
Well, thank you for
and
correcting.
also just on that point, we do have an ask of funding from town meeting. It's about $2 million. And I have no idea if that's enough or not. I basically used a per square footage of easement for another project that was really expensive. So I figured this is probably a ceiling, but we do have an ask for $2 million for Pleasant Street at this town meeting to fund just the damage awards for those easements. So it wouldn't be free. It's essentially, do we want the one way, or do you want to pay off the abutters $2 million to have it one way, to have it two way? So it's definitely you can put a cost on that or a value to it.
But isn't that about the same price as the easements on the entire Tom Nevers Road? On that chart you showed us?
Correct. That's about the same value. And just to be fair,
So
it's not for just that $2 million just for the one property owner. It's for another section as well, but it's about $1.5 million for all of the property. And again, I have no idea if that's accurate or not because we haven't had it appraised. But that again, I'm using a value from another project as a best guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know Elizabeth Almodovar sent a letter out that you got, Mike, and that I got, and that you got, RJ. And I spoke to her, and she's up in Maine at the moment with medical stuff with her mother, and so. But I suggested she come and talk to us next month. So she's very much opposed to this as someone whose driveway backs in on this. So
well, her driveway's on Atlantic Avenue. I think her concern is that the few vehicles that would be diverted would make it difficult for her to back out onto Atlantic. And I've met with her on site and had these conversations. She was, very friendly, just agreed to disagree that we should pilot this. I mean, I think the pilot's fine just to collect the data and see how the community feels. But beyond that, I don't think I'm wed to this concept very much. Mr. Chair, if it's all right, Joe has also mentioned about using the data points and whatnot, just to be clear on the timeline for everyone. If we continue the pilot, the traffic counting for the intersections will be done later in March. We were hoping to get the contract approved by the select board last week, and for whatever reason it didn't happen. So we got to wait till this next month, the middle of March, to execute that contract and collect the data in the middle of March. And we're asking that the pilot be extended through the end of April. And at the April 30th meeting, we're asking that the select board take action on whether to continue the pilot or not, based on the traffic data that we've collected and well, I don't think there's any debate at all that the public input that we collected is pretty significant as opposed. But I do have, I can talk about the survey results and the polling results that we sent out. I've got about 160 responses to the survey that we got. About 18 of those 160 say that they've benefited from this being one way. So it's not everyone, but it's a very small percentage.
Right. Well, thanks, Mike. So, do we
Quick
have
question.
any? Yes. Yes, sir.
Sorry, just question. The traffic data that is being collected, is that all vehicle traffic, car traffic, or is there
No.
bike data being corrected as well? Because as
Yes.
I've seen the project, they've directed the bike on an ungraded road that's torn up with a very narrow passageway for the bikes on the left side going through multiple potholes. So I would not feel safe on my bike going along the designated area for the bike. I would prefer to ride in the road on the designated one area. Like it just, I don't see any of this data from a bicycle point being helpful. I see, I just see that a lot of negativity.
Yeah, I also hear most of those are vehicle drivers complaining, which has been my main issue with it. With this, I think the data is skewed. I think we're not hearing from cyclists. We're not at a time of year where a lot of cyclists are even using it. And so I think the data is horrendously skewed in one direction for people who are inconvenienced by their cars, which I get. I completely agree. I completely agree with backing on Atlantic Avenue. All of that is true. I'm trying to search for and figure out and suss out, is this safer? Is what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. And just from my general opinion is a one-lane road with more of a buffer is going to cause vehicles to go faster and slow down traffic in other ways. So I didn't think it was a good idea to do the pilot. I think it was a good idea to do a pilot, but not at this specific time when the flow of traffic was already going to be impeded and you weren't going to have bikers. And so none of the data I don't see as valuable for the bike position. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be as polite as possible.
But no, I think there's no question that if it was a smooth road, and in fact it's sort of pea gravel for the motorists anyway.
Right.
I mean, so if the road had been finished and if there was a separation that allowed a 4-foot bike path there, then we would get data that you could argue would be less skewed. But it is. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and there was an issue with when it snowed, there was no snow removal.
Right.
So it was like there's it's compounding.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
I can, Mr. Chair, if it's all right, just on the snow removal, because the concrete is so poor.
Right.
The snowplow, Ray would tell you, like, I didn't want to ruin my plow in order to plow a road that was just not put together. And that concrete's going to be picked up and destroyed at some point, probably during this pilot, and repaved when it gets warmer. So maybe that'll be a more fair assessment, is after the concrete's gone, there's fresh asphalt down. If we continue the pilot during that period, we actually get and look at the survey results after that happens, maybe we start looking at different information. But at least we know if it's burdensome or not to drive. So we have that answered. But you're right, Edwin, and everyone else, the counts aren't going to be what they are going to be in like July and August for bike and pedestrian usage. But at least we get a feel for the tolerance of driving around when traffic's not at its max and fully stressed. If it's a burden now in February, it's going to be a burden in July and August.
Yeah.
So this is a good
Okay.
indicator of that. But thank you. When it did snow, I did see footprints in the snow, so it is being used. If next time it snows, drive by and say, look at it. If you see footprints, and you're like, hey, people are using this thing.
A bicyclist pushing his bike. So, all right. Do we have any committee comments? Or failing not, shall we
Should
adjourn?
I just talk about the sign real quick? Because that wasn't
Oh,
recorded.
sorry. Yeah, no,
No,
totally.
I thought it was kind of a good
Totally,
time.
Joe.
Hold on, let me make sure I don't have any blockers on. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
All right.
absolutely.
I blocked myself in my gallery, so okay. So here is a temporary sign that my brother gathered in Falmouth, and Ray Sylvia from the town who made signs made this basically rolling up. Oop, going the wrong way. Audible sign, and this would kind of go T-bone into the town meeting. This is something we can bring forward and kind of let everyone see what we're thinking of moving forward. The sign that we use as an example was a state sign, it was the green and the blue. So I had Ray Sylvia put this together, have more of a town, more HUC approval, sign committee kind of thing. But that's what we're hoping to do, is kind of keep this, more in the theme. And whether it's on an 8x8 or 4x4, I think the 8x8 would have less people, clipping it or breaking it, or so I think it may be something, to talk about. And that was something I brought up with Ray. But yeah, he was able to do this, but like I said, would have to probably get 100 made, and then that would have to be so I'm sure funding or RFP would have to be graded. But this was kind of something I put together quickly while we were having conversations, and you were all talking about this. So there it is in a glory. But I shared it with everyone. So Mike, I don't know if you want to post on the town website or whatever you want to do, but that's kind of the quick and down dirty. Or maybe I can hand it off to you and you can bring it before the select board. Or Ian, you want to go before the select board? But I thought I would do that once town council signed off on the articles for us. So that's why I did what I did. So
I
So-
think that's a great idea. And sorry, if I could just wait one thing. I think the town would benefit hugely by getting whatever design is finalized for this as a sticker that's available to put on tubes of rental bikes as well.
Yeah,
ooh, I like that.
yeah, great
Genius.
idea. But Joe, what I don't understand is why it has to be larger. In other words, it looks to me as though it's easily read by bicyclists, and it's,
So
and at the
with
beginning, at the end of the bike path, I mean, how can you miss it?
so you can't, but what Ray's saying is that the plotter that the town has doesn't is not able to do this font very well. It was very difficult for them to create. The
Gotcha.
font here is much better.
Okay,
So,
Yeah.
it's much easier to do. But then again, the time frame, I think once they're all created, it's going to be easy to put in. And if something is stolen or broken, whatever, yes, I think Ray could do that. But the equipment that is within the town's offices now, Ray's office, it took this him a long time.
gotcha.
So it was arduous.
Yeah.
So whatever company, whether it's the town buys a new machine that he can do it, whether it gets sourced out and we get estimates or state funding or whatever the kind of way to do. But this is also on wood. So is that, we've had much success with the Ray Sylvia's signs. I do know he's got possibly a new employee coming that worked in this advertising industry, but right now the town doesn't have the equipment to do this at a quick and easy
Right.
option. And I did really quite a quick math with Ray, and we stopped at 60. You know, if you kind of go around on every bike path and the major intersections, we were around 50 something, and we just stopped counting. But you know, I was like, do you just get 100, and that way, if they're stolen or broken, you can easily grab them with it. You know, the next day, go out and put it up. So, and I just like that. You are right. As you get close enough to it, you can read it. Is it a problem at 20 miles an hour? I don't know. It's a test we could all do. You know, set up on a bike path on a normal post, and that's something you can read as you're riding by as it gets a little warmer. So, but no, I think as a first draft, taking the highway green, if you will, the state green sign, and turn it into a Nantucket sign, I think Ray, you know, really did an exceptional job. I also think it's something where, you know, if you guys want, you know, like I said, bring it before the select board to look at it, and then at town meeting, you know, have an example. Maybe have it standing in the lobby. Maybe we can have leaflet or something you hand out, but everyone as they walk by, you know, generally could be 1,000 people walk by and give comments really briefly. First bluff, sorry. It may be something we kind of think about, and as BPAC members, you know, show our support for it or something like this, unless we have comments or tweaks or whatever. But
We could set you up in a Peloton. You could be in a Peloton in the lobby.
No spandex, but yeah, I will be on the So, winter's been very good to me. So no, but I think that's something we should kind of like talk about maybe next meeting. But I just got it today, so I wanted to share it as quickly as possible. And of course, like I said, I saw an image, but what to go up forward next, and hopefully we're successful at that meeting. And I want to thank Brian Riley for town council, Chief Casper. She was fantastic in weighing in, and I did exactly what you did, Ian. I went against the grain and didn't listen to state, kind of like you were going against Mike. So, but I guess we're a rebel without a cause, some ways. But no, I think this is a really kind of important thing, and I think that it's just a learning, you know, just visual cues reminder to work together. So
I think it's great, and be happy to present it on your behalf or with you to the select board. And you know, and I think it'd be great if we could find funding. You know, I'm sure Ray, it's not like Ray doesn't have a pretty full plate to get it maybe done off island, maybe would be less expensive than one might think. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, there's a local vendor, and so, you know, it's like, that's why I said put up the RFP, and it's, you know, and if it goes local, that's great. If it's off island, you know,
right.
I think what is best for the town. But yeah, I said to Ray I could kind of tweak it, but I'm kind of at a point right now. I think it works really well. So, you know, I think say Ray, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he could put together a 4x4 post and a little stand, or I could build one in my garage. But have something for town meeting that's sitting there for everyone to look at as they're walking in and out of town meeting. I think would be kind of a nice little visual. So that's kind of my recommendation. You guys, I don't know how you guys are going to vote on that.
Well, so I was assuming that it would be linear like that, so that isn't a 4x4. That's what, 1x5 or something. 1x4.
It's a 1x8, so it's 7¼ inches wide and 24 inches long. You know, and it could be elongated, or maybe the fabricators, you know, that font could be a little bit easier. With, I think Ray said his cutter is 20 years old. So, and with a new employee coming in, he may have somebody said, I do know he has one that is broken, and he's just can't get someone to come and service it, sadly. So from Ohio. So, but yeah, that's kind of where he's at. So,
well, I think we're all in favor of it, right?
Yeah,
Totally.
it's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it really is. Thank you so much.
Mr.
You're
Chair, if it's all
welcome.
right, just to follow up, Joe, I did try to invite you to a meeting that I had with the Falmouth folks to kind of talk about the signs. I don't think you're available for that meeting date, but on January 30th, I did talk with Catherine Jensen, I think is her name. She's with the Falmouth Shining Sea. She's the chair of the Falmouth BPAC, essentially.
Yeah.
And so her and the vice chair were on that call and kind of walked me through the history of those signs. Not to burst the bubble, because I think that what Ray did look fantastic, and probably it is a great idea to put these out. Just the feedback I got from her, and I think I shot you an email with this, Joe. They're not going to continue using those signs. They're actually going to replace those with the speed limit decals on the path itself, on the Shining Sea path, just like we talked about thermoplastic, putting it on the path
Yeah.
instead of having a sign. They have the stacked icons. I call it a totem sign, but they have a stacked icon signs that with 6 symbols possible. They show 4 at a time on their signs. Only a few of them actually have the speed limit sign on them, so they're a little aggravated that not all of them have the speed limit on there. And they actually post 15 miles an hour on theirs, and even though that's below the standard for e-bikes, they don't want e-bikes on the paths at all. So that's they like the 15 mile an hour speed limit on that. So talking about the sign, that wasn't a successful conversation. I like what you've done with Ray, and maybe that has
Yeah.
legs and we can do something like that. There's the Sign It Here folks, the local vendors. They could probably do a sticker that he can do the plaque, the board,
Yeah.
mount that on
Yeah.
site, and just put stickers in those spaces where he's having trouble doing the lettering and whatnot. So maybe that has some legs there. Catherine also suggested something that I didn't even think about, and maybe you all want to take this on as like an idea. But they're thinking about doing political signs. You know how you like vote for so and so, and they
Yeah.
put that in the yard. They want to do that, do yard signs, but for bike and pedestrian advocacy, like keep safe or keep Falmouth safe, or share the road with the bicycles, something like this. But instead of having the totem sign, have folks volunteer to put yard signs up, and that could be just as effective. That's what her argument was. I thought that had legs. I don't know if that's something you
Yeah.
don't think is a good idea.
Yeah, and to follow up on to Edwin's point, I think if if the signage was as designed, but I also think if there's a pamphlet or something at the bike shops and they're on the bikes or they're at the door of like, hey, FYI, this is how, maybe we don't have as much signage as we should, but maybe that's the way to do is we as they're riding out of the bike shop, they're like, hey, and this is rules of the road of the bike path, and be mindful of that, and or a pamphlet or something. I think that ties into it. And then kind of jumping on that is Libby has talked about doing an informational video for us or funding. She's trying to figure out some way to fund it, but to bring awareness where the videos are on the boat and around, and then we would do a separate one that is for the school system, and in a way of kids from there's a over 16 can only ride an e-bike. Is there a way to bring an education in and then get a training on the school property and then get a learner's permit, if you will, or something like that, and then that they're able to kind of go on. I don't think anyone wants to stop the e-bikes because they are a great mode of transportation and very useful along the island. And I even with the bus numbers that Mike has been toting around of jumping 75-80% this summer, I think is fantastic and not in the payment. But I think that there's also a component to these e-bikes and the transport, the easy less vehicles on the roadway, if you will. I think is a kind of a really good thing, and less parking downtown, etc. That I think if we can kind of work this on, weave it all together, I think it's going to be really impactful, and I think it'd be really wise for us to do this. And I love you mentioned, ride to school program, and maybe there's something component of that, and bring your kid to school day and then go on to work day, and I think there's a lot of programs we can kind of work on as we kind of go through. But right now, if we did a video, let's make sure everyone's green. Let's go forward. We just need to reach out to a couple of people before we can kind of do an RFP, and we've got one person interested, but I think there's like two other people we need to connect with, but it needs your approval. So it's something Ian or Mike, I can sit down with you, or Libby can sit down with Mike and bring up to speed on what we got to do as far as not breaking the law and making sure that we do the right RFPs and etc. I mean, I'm sure Mike, but basically get Libby's input. But she's in favor, from not to put words in her mouth, but she's in favor of this and really likes it. So I think we're on the right path. So hopefully town meeting is successful for us.
So if you have the designs, you got something that you gave Ray so you can put those decals on there. A sticker going to be made that looks just like that, and that could be stuck. That's not a $10,000 item. You don't need an RFP or do a procurement. If this is like a few $100, you just pick somebody you like and who does a good job and just give them the job.
All right. You get me in jail. I don't look at the stripes or orange. Just so you know.
Just don't go looking at the law to double check me at all.
No, I mean, I have a plotter in my office, so I mean, I could do a sample, and that's the other thing is, could I tweak this for Ray? And so that was he and I could have a conversation. But I do think if it's problematic, I kind of need to find out what they can do, and whether it's sign or it's Poets Corner, or if it's the Ramesses, whatever the entity is, but I just think that we should kind of just see what the cost is and get an estimate. Would be the wisest thing to do. A letter of agreement.
Well, we'll make sure you get a tailored orange jumpsuit if all else fails, Joe.
I think that Halloween costume's been taken, so I'll have to come up with a different idea.
Okay. All right. So, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks, RJ. By roll call vote, Edwin Claflin,
Aye.
Joseph Topham,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Thanks, everybody. Another really interesting meeting. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you all.
I guess.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
Take
Cheers.
care.
Yeah.